All right. So Matt provided all the details you should know with regards to the data requirements, expected files to upload, and some nuances in the files that you have to submit to CalPads. So once all of those files are in CalPads, we then go on to the certification process, right? However, I just wanted to emphasize through the workflow the essential cycle of data submission in CalPads. So initially, you submit the files, um, and of course, you have to be aware that some file types are replacement type processing. And so, in the CalPads user manual, there is the section under file uploads. You are able to see what types for any of your one are replacement processing. This is important because whenever you submit a file for a specific school that meets the same operating keys, to replace the file, it overwrites those records that exist in CalPads. And so, and so right now, it is also key in understanding what files to submit to CalPads right now. So if you are certain that you have your staff demographic records, CRSC records already in a good place. I mean, it's final. There are no changes in terms of the seeds that you will be assigning to those courses. Then by all means submit your SDM, your CRSE for both semester 1 and semester 2 because those won't change anyway, right? And then of course you submit the SCSC for semester 1 or maybe quarter 1, quarter 2, depending on the marking periods that you provide, right? That's indicated because, again, if you submit a file that has incomplete data that includes the same values as this, it will overwrite those files. So whatever grades that you have now that is available, semester 1, quarter one, quarter two, trimester one, trimester two, then you could submit those to CalPads while waiting for the last grading period, right? So that way you have a head start in terms of validating your records and also possibly correcting additional errors that CalPads is seeing. So that's um, that's important. Also, you have to be aware of the order of submission. Although we're now in a so-called redesign where you can submit all files all at once without any validations, chances are you may encounter issues with regards to missing CRSE records for any SCSE records that you submit. So it's still important that you follow the sequence of submission. You submit your SDM first, and then you submit the CRSC, and then you submit the SCSC. Because if you because it's difficult to then to take away a file or overwrite a file, especially if you submitted an SCSC batch file that shouldn't even be reported to CalPads and that doesn't have its corresponding CRSE record. So be aware of those nuances when submitting files. So again, once you've submitted those files, then we then subject those records to another level of certification or validations. We have the certification errors, and then of course the certification data discrepancy errors, right? And there are different documentation that you need to have handy when troubleshooting errors. Can anyone provide me those information? Any document that is required for troubleshooting end of year one? Can see. Okay, the error list. That's correct. However, there's a more important file. So the user manual. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm referring to the CalPAS valid code combinations document. Okay, so because there are a lot of when you're there are errors in the end of year one that most of them trigger because there is an invalid combination of stuff, right? Or there is a mismatch of information, or So you always have to make sure that you have the valid code combinations document available as well. And then, of course, once you've resolved the errors, you then re- review your reports. You then distribute all of those reports to the appropriate stakeholders who the stakeholders who are responsible in making sure that the information is correct. Maybe your CTE coordinators, your the ones that handle the WBLR, maybe your special ed person as well. If your WBLR has someone involving a special ed student, so all of those information needs to be reviewed. And then, what specific tool do we need? You should be aware of with regards to when reviewing reports. Actually, it's over there. It's the report mapping guide. So in the CalPAS user manual, we also have the CalPAS report mapping guide. I will demo how to look at the mapping guide and compare the data with the reports, right? And then, of course, unlike end of year 3 and 4, end of year 1 only requires one LA approval. You're not waiting for a SELPA to approve your data, right? Your reports. So that's good news. However, it's a double-edged sword, right? You don't have to rely on a secondary approval. However, the responsibility lies on you to be able to certify before the deadline, right? And so just make sure that all of the data is disseminated as early as possible. Be aware of the timelines or the vacations of those folks that you will sharing the data with. That way, they can review the data, the reports before you leave for vacation or before they leave for vacation, right? So the next slides are essentially just resource materials because normally this part here, my part is more of a demo process, right? And so that's what I'll be doing right now. I'll be showing you um, the certification process. So bear with me if our test environment would fail me today. um, but essentially, I just wanted to demo some errors, how to resolve the errors, and show you the process. Okay. So once all of your data is in CalPads, you then move on to the certification status page, right? You click on the certification status. It brings you to this section of CalPads, which in turn you then have to click end of year 1. For end of year 1, you have like any other submissions, you have your summary. The certification details summary section provides you the snapshot created date, the revision ID, and most recent CDD run that this snapshot has captured, right? And then, of course, this provides you the default revision status that you're in. And then we move on to the error validation section. It would list as well errors that you need to resolve. Of course, we have our basic cert fours, which would also appear in the other 3 certification submissions. And then you have an EOI specific certification error. And then you may have some warnings as well. We have a question earlier about, hey, what if we don't have any work-based learning program? Are we required to do it to report that? Do we get an error? The answer is no. However, you'll get a warning, and that also goes for the CTE folks. Okay, if you don't operate a CTE program and you have a high school, and then of course if you don't operate a work-based learning program and you have a high school, these warnings will definitely trigger for you. And it's just notification that you may have forgotten to upload the file, right? And then once all of these errors are resolved, at least the fatal errors, um, that's only the time when you then go ahead and review the reports because it doesn't matter. It doesn't make sense to review your reports if you have fatal errors you need to resolve because one element of CalPads is that the reports will not include students that triggered certification errors or CDDs, right? So resolve the errors and then review the reports. Once you reviewed all of the reports, then at least these four, then this would then turn into a green check mark. And then you'll have the box here that you will need to click on, just telling us that you agree that all of the reports that you've reviewed are accurate and valid. And so once you check that box, that's the only time the LA approve button will appear in this section. So once you've clicked that LA approve button, you're done with the end of year one. All right. So that's the usual certification process. So let's discuss some of the nuances that you have to be aware of, right? So as I've mentioned, the snapshots normally also include the CDD here. But that doesn't mean that whatever changes you've made on the data discrepancy side reflects in this snapshot, right? So the snapshot will only reflect the changes that you've made on the data discrepancies based on that time frame. So why am I saying this? Number one, as obviously you've experienced, CalPAD's certification or snapshots are running slow. Whatever corrections you've made to address data discrepancies aren't appearing here, or if you've tried to address all of these errors, maybe your revision is still delayed, right? And so you have to be aware of the different dates here. Going to the data discrepancy, as you can see, I have here CDD as of 5/9. However, if I go to the data discrepancy, I have a CDD that triggered yesterday. All right. So that's essentially the some of the behavior in CalPAS that you have to be aware of. Sometimes there's latency, there's lag in terms of the snapshot revisions triggering for you. So if you've made corrections here, and the data discrepancy section already has zero errors, but your snapshot does not reflect that, then chances are uh, yours you need a new snapshot. There's a delay in the snapshots, right? So another nuance is this in review uncertified button. So let's just say you're just a 10-month employee, or you're probably just going on vacation for 2 days, and you've brought down the errors to zero, and you wanted to share the reports. So without the fear of more errors coming up for end of year one, you can check this in review uncertified box to freeze this version, to freeze this revision ID, and then tell them, hey, look at the in review version of the reports, look at this revision ID, and then on their end, your CT coordinator or whoever reviews the data will then go to reports, go to snapshot reports, and will look for that specific revision status in review uncertified, and will look for the specific revision ID, right? So that's a way for you to freeze your data without while waiting for your data stakeholders to review the reports, right? All right, so those are the nuances and functionality of the certification page. Now, let's discuss some of the errors. All right, so Cert 4, we all know this. Cert 4 just tells us a student has no ethnicity and race data. And the driving file that causes this is the SINF, which is essentially the demographic info. How do I know that? Because of the error list. So if I click on Cert 4, it brings up the error list version of that error in the user manual. And that error will then provide us the different fields being validated, which of course says here there's no ethnicity, race, or data, or there's a discrepancy in that information, right? And so I'm pretty sure you guys already know this, so I don't have to help to show you how to troubleshoot this issue, but this is just a way to show you that you have, if you click on the errors here, it would provide you the necessary information to jumpstart your troubleshooting process. Okay, so we also have a CERT 123. So Matt was explaining to you earlier the nuances of the SCTE file, and how to represent or how to submit um, SCTE completers to CalPads. So if for some reason you failed to meet those requirements, chances are you may have one of these errors, which is CERT 123, missing or invalid SCSE record for CTE completer. So what is this error? So I click on this, CERT 123. This error is stating that, hey, there's no student course completion submitted for a CTE capstone at the same reporting LEA, or associated state course code submitted is not valid for the CTE pathway code. The fields being validated are this, and the files that you need to check are, or being validated are, the SCTE file, the CRSC file, and the SCSC file. So there is an explanation of the error, and of course the suggested resolution. And then of course, does it say what documentation to use? Nope, it doesn't say that. Oh, there you go. It says here the same academic year. So what is this error? So the system is validating that the student for whom a student career or technical education completer record has been submitted for the industry sector has completed at least one course submitted in the SCSE file associated with the SCTE record in the same academic year at the same reporting area as indicated in the valid code combinations course group master combos. So this is essentially your clue of what documentation to use, right? So let's go to that document first. So why do we have to use the valid code combinations? Because this, aside from the user manual, aside from the error list, aside from maybe the CFS, this is your the most helpful documentation when troubleshooting end of year one. So it says to look at the course group master combo. So I right click on this and I click on course group master combo. Okay. All right. So the course group master combos provides you all of the state course codes in CalPads. However, you have to filter the last column here to only show you the state course codes that are still valid in this current academic year. So I can check that. I click on NA, and then we go back here. So as you can see, you have your self-contained classes, you have your CTE courses, and of course some 9,000 courses at the bottom. But this is essentially saying that the error was saying that, hey, you're telling me that this student is a CTE completer this year, but I don't see the SCSE record for it. So let's go back to the student. I click on show. So the bottom line here is that you can't claim a student to be a SCTE completer this year by submitting an SCTE record if the student did not complete the capstone course this year. So let's go to this SSID. and let's see what the issue was. So I scroll to the bottom and I look at the SCTE file and the student course section. All right. So it's stating that we're claiming that the student completed both CT pathway 100 and CT pathway 101. Okay? So now that means CalPads is looking for the SCSE record associated to that capstone course. Right? Okay, so we look here, check this course group master combo, and then we go to that specific pathway code. So it's 100 and 101. So as you can see, you have the entire list of courses specific to each pathway. So you have here pathway 100 and three courses. There you have your intro, you have your concentrator and capstone course. That goes for the 101 as well. So I highlight the capstone course. I highlight the capstone course here. So there should be an SCSE record with a grade associated to that student for 100 with a state course code of 71112 or 101 for 711 7122. Okay. However, if I look here, I see that there was a 711 7112, and then there's also 7122, but the state course code is blank. So there's something going on here, right? So with 7112, why is CalPAS triggering this error if we're claiming that the student did indeed complete the capstone course for this student? That's correct. It's the wrong year. All right? Wrong year. So now you have to go back to your counselor, you have to go back to your CTE person and say, hey, when did this student complete the pathway? Right? Oh, we completed the pathway last year, but we forgot to claim the pathway. That's why we're submitting the record this year. That's a no-no. You can only claim the SCSC, the student as a CT pathway completer in the year that they completed the pathway. Okay? So the assumption is the student should have followed the correct sequence, right? You have the intro, you have your concentrator course, which is the second course, and then the capstone course, and then report the SCTE during that year. So chances are for this, maybe they just submitted the SCSC for the incorrect year, or if the case was that the capstone was last year, but they forgot to claim the student, the only way to do that is to just re-enroll the student this year, add the student in the SCSC record this year. That way it matches that year and CalPAS will acknowledge it. But then that's just a quick fix, right? You have to make sure that you report the CT pathway during the year that the student completed that pathway, right? It can be next year, it can be ahead, a year before they even completed. So that all boils down to you guys making sure that the student follows the sequence in the correct order, right? Always make sure that the counselors schedule their courses to simplify things. Now, if let's say the student switched the order, they finished the capstone course last year, and then finished the concentrator course this year, which I don't know why, then the only way for you to tell us to be able to report that SCTE record is to also include that capstone course grade this year, right? That's the only way to do that. Now, if let's say you submitted an SCTE, however, the student really didn't complete anything, then you shouldn't be reporting an SCTE record in CalPAD. So let's say if a student just merely completed the capstone course this year, just as an elective, but isn't part of the pathway, and for some reason, uh, you think that was once you complete a capstone course, that student completes a pathway, which shouldn't be the case. So the only way for you to delete to correct that is to delete the CTE pathway record. Okay, so that's one thing. Now let's go to this record. Why is CalPAS triggering a CERT 123 for this record if it's there? Can someone give me a clue? This, if you're a seasoned veteran, this missing information would give you a clue. All right, I'll give you a clue. The semester 2 is missing. You need the correct state course code. Well, the state course code when I submitted the file is correct. It's just that there's something wrong with the record. That's why it's not showing here. Normally, if you have this behavior in CalPADS, there is a data discrepancy error. Okay, which then points me to the next common error that you guys normally encounter, which is the SCSC 139, our lovely SCSC 139 error, right? My favorite error to solve because it helps me bring out my Sherlock Holmes skills, I guess. So if I go back here on the data discrepancy, it's triggering an SCSC 139 because you looked at your file and you said, I'm pretty sure I've submitted the SCSC record for this 7122, which is 101. I'm pretty sure I submitted that, and obviously it's in CalPADS. It's just that the error is still triggering your CERT 128. So why is this error triggering? It's because you have missing information in or discrepancy in that record. So if I click on this, if I click on view, true enough, I'm getting a data discrepancy for this record. The data discrepancy. So it says here, SCSC 139, missing core section record, SCSC, right? So how do you resolve SCSC 139? We go back again to the error, right? Let's go back to the error code and search SCSC 0139. E1? No. Hmm. Let me go back here, go to troubleshooting. Let's go to SCSC 139. All right. Test still shows an SCSC 139. This should be SCSC 139. Anyway, it's stating that the student course section record must have a corresponding course section record. All right. So how do you resolve this? So the fields validated is that you submitted an SCSC record. However, CalPAS couldn't find the corresponding or matching CRSE record that has the same fields validated, right? So let's go to this. How do you resolve this? You go then to, you compare the course section record versus the validated SCSE record, right? So to do that, the only way to do that is to go to compare the course data. So I go to course data. And then so I will be comparing based on the error. I need to compare the first. I need to compare these field elements: school course of delivery, academic year ID, local course, course section, and academic term code. Right? Let me just bring this out. So I go to my course completion, I search, and I look at local course ID CAP 7112. So I have CAP 7112, and I compare the information here. All right. So the error says the SCSE record must match the fields in the CRSE record, right? The school course of delivery, academic year ID, local course ID, course section ID, and academic term code. So with that, I compare that information, right? I then compare school course of delivery, Berkeley High, which is, okay, and this is essentially Berkeley High 9156. Now I compare local course ID, academic year 23-24. I have it on 23-24, right? Now I compare local course ID, CAP-7122. I have CAP-7122. Course section ID, CAP-7122, CAP-7122. Academic term code, full year, there you go. Academic term code in your SCSE record is S1. So essentially, the SCSE 139 record, the SCSE record triggered an SCSE 139 because one of the values didn't match. So there are three reasons when you would get an SCSE 139. One is that if the course is obviously missing from CalPads, or you submitted the SCSE ahead of the CRSE, obviously that would trigger the error, or the third one is that there are no matching. Some of the fields were not matching, and that's the case for this error. So to resolve this, you have to resubmit your SCSE record. And when you need to when you have to resubmit your SCSE records, make sure that all of your SCSE records for that specific school and for that specific term code is submitted, right? That way you don't overwrite the existing records in CalPETS. Now, if this is only one error, right, then a way to just resolve this issue is canceling this. I mean, if you only have one student that's causing an SCSE 139 or a handful of them, then you just have to resubmit the file and that would overwrite it, right? Or you can just go here and add the students in this course section. Okay, so that's how to resolve SCSE 139. Once you've resolved the issue, then the student will then show a valid SCSC record in here, and CalPAS will then recognize that the student really completed 101 because you had that valid SCSC record for the capstone course. Okay, so that's a way to do troubleshooting, and that's normally the two common errors that you would encounter for end of year one. you have your invalid, your missing student courses if you're claiming a student as an ACT pathway, or you have your SCSE 139s because you have either mismatch of SCSE records compared to the course, or you oversubmitted SCSE records for students that when you shouldn't even be submitting those. So let's say you submitted for some reason your SCSE extract included SCSE records for self-contained courses, right? So your 1000s, but your CRSC extracted only departmentalized courses. That's a scenario, right? Because it can't match, it can't find the parent CRSC record. So those are some scenarios that you need to anticipate just in case you encounter these issues. All right. So any questions? Did I confuse you more? No questions. I guess the bottom line here is that you really don't need to know everything in CalPAS. You just need to know where the resources are that would guide you in correcting errors or determining data requirements, right? So make sure that you bookmark the CalPAS user manual, you bookmark the YouTube channel, and all of these other resources that we normally share with, with you guys. Right, so now once you've resolved the errors, then of course we go to reports.